Welcome back to Growing with Noah, a podcast about building a business and keeping healthy. I'm Noah Koff. The best way to support this show is to check out our sponsors and buy their stuff. By the way, these are products I use in my life, and you should too. Today's episode is brought to you by BioTrust. When I'm at home or on the road, I use BrainTrust Ageless formula to better energy and mental clarity. It's become part of my morning ritual, especially when I'm on the road or having an active day, which happens a lot. Today is also brought to you by Peet's Coffee, the original craft coffee. Their subscription is perfect if you want high quality beans shipped fresh to your door. You can let them surprise you with new blends or build your own. Hit the link in the description and check them out. Today's guest is Dr. Anna Schwartz. She's one of the world's leading experts on cancer recovery, exercise, physiology, and human resilience. But this conversation isn't about theory, it's about lived experience. Anna has worked with Olympic athletes, cancer patients, and everyday people navigating deep loss and fatigue. And she brings this rare mix of clinical depth and emotional honesty. We talk about what happens to your identity when life hits hard, what it means to rebuild from that, and how high performers, especially the ones who spent years driving toward a goal, can learn to slow down without losing their edge. So if you're someone who's been through something and wondered, how do I come back from this? This one's for you. Let's get into it. Welcome, Anna. Welcome,
Hi,
Dr. Anna.
Noah.
It's a great pleasure and honor to have you on our podcast today.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
And I wanted to start our conversation today by talking about hope, because there was a moment in your life when you realized that there was a shift in biology for you. And was it more science or something spiritual for you?
That's a really good question. So it was both science because I was just astounded at how becoming more physically active was changing my body and my mind. And really spiritually it was affecting me because it was very uplifting for me. I went from being a carefree college student when I was first diagnosed with lymphoma to suddenly this huge dark storm cloud coming over me, and just felt like I was so oppressed by this new diagnosis and this radical change in my life, and things that I thought I had all these limitless possibilities, and suddenly my life was just crashing down on me. And so when I started cycling, it was really because I had such profound depression and overwhelming fatigue, and I had gained weight. And I just knew that I had to do something. And part of that was driven by this real fear that I wasn't going to be able to live the dreams that I'd had in my life. And one of those had been to ride my bicycle across the country. And so I just decided I'm at rock bottom. I have nothing to lose. And I got on my bike one day and went for a ride. And I didn't go very far. And it was kind of painful because I was so out of shape. But boy, I came back and I just felt like I had, ridden around the world and I had conquered the world. So it had really
Hmm.
changed me physically and emotionally and gave me a little carrot to keep doing it.
Do you think that there's a transformation that only suffering makes possible?
I absolutely believe that suffering offers opportunity for transformation. And it's really through taking the time to be introspective, thoughtful, and definitely being brave and being willing to take action and put yourself out there. And certainly my lymphoma diagnosis revealed strengths that I never knew I had and really put me in the position to take that step forward and reshape my understanding of what strength really looks like. Because before cancer, it was really about not just living in the moment, but being a college kid. And it shifted my thinking to more persistence, more following my dreams and what I really believed in, and being more creative. And the cancer uniquely taught me that there is a connection between physical and emotional and spiritual resilience. And it was more than cycling, it was also having a community of people who really believed in you and supported me and got me through things. And the growth that came from that helped me to see that cancer was merely something that not didn't just happen to me, but instead it was like a catalyst for creating something new. And this insight that both physical movement could transform me physically, emotionally, and spiritually became the cornerstone of my research and has shaped my understanding of what true strength lies in the integration of physical and emotional wellness.
When someone feels like their identity has been shattered, maybe they've had loss or illness, what do you tell them about rebuilding who they are? And where does that spark and inspiration come from for you?
When someone feels like their identity has been shattered by illness, I tell them that something that I discovered myself was that rebuilding doesn't mean returning to who you were before. It means rediscovering who you can become because of what you've experienced. So it's really about a whole transformation. So I encourage them to think about what are their bucket list dreams kind of thing and pick a goal, maybe several goals, a long-term and a short-term goal. And I always want people's goals to be a little bit out of reach, so they're pushing themselves. But at the same time, they need to be somewhat achievable. I mean, like a goal to go and walk on the moon is soon going to become achievable, but right now it would be hard for most of us to go do a spacewalk on the moon. Um, and then they need to find one small physical action that they can take control of each day and get out and do it. And for me, it was getting on my bike. But for them, it may be something as small as walking to their mailbox or taking their dog out and playing with the dog or playing with their grandkids. That may be actually their long-term goal because they're so debilitated now. But these small actions become powerful affirmations of our agency when illness has stripped away so much of our control. Um, and then, so that it gives them that spark for rebuilding that often you have to prove to yourself by doing small steps to see that they can connect. I see over and over that patients, when they make these amazing small steps, they're astounded by themselves that, hey, they were able to do it because they had given up. Um, and it starts an upward spiral of recovery. And I tell them that rebuilding happens through concrete, measurable actions, not just positive thinking, but positive thinking is really important. Our bodies respond to the challenges of adaptation, and that adaptation changes us physically and emotionally. But the exercise is so powerful in this whole recovery process, and it becomes a tangible proof of our individual capacity to get well and heal. So yes, as a roundabout, suffering gives us unique insights that can transform our experience into not just helping ourselves, but so that we can be there, be present, and be of service to others.
Let's talk about high achievers. There's a lot of high achievers that
Hmm.
are in our audience today that are listening, and a lot of high achievers often equate slowing down with failing in
Hmm.
some way. How do you help a high achiever reframe recovery, not as failure, but as taking back power and something that's just not being weak?
Yeah. Well, that's such an a question that's filled with balance. And as someone who's set 3 world records and done these crazy things on my bike, I'm intimately experienced with how high achievers equate slowing down with failure. And it really is. You just think you're going down and I'm never going to be able to rebound. And there's a particular mindset that drives exceptional performance. And it's a relentless pursuit of goals and constantly pushing the barriers and the boundaries and achieving excellence. So I help high achievers reframe their recovery by showing them that strategic rest is actually part of the performance enhancement. So you have to keep exercising and pushing yourself mentally and spiritually, but when I share with them training methods that have led me to success through various different goals, they see that structured recovery periods are as important as intense workout sessions, whether those are physical workouts or intensely, working on your computer or whatever it is that is your area, your goal for high achievement. And that rest isn't weakness. It's a crucial part of peak performance.
Mhm. Mhm.
I also really try and help them, encourage them to see that achievement orientation is part of recovery. So there's this balance, and they have to challenge themselves to become strategic and disciplined about healing as they are about their performance. So, really, when I work with competitive athletes who are coping with cancer, I help them to see their treatment and recovery as the most important race of their life, whether it's one that requires, because it's one that really requires the same dedication, planning, and mental toughness as in any kind of competition, whether it's, you know, on a bike, running, or in the boardroom. Um, and so it's transforming from a passive patient to an active
Mhm.
participant in their healing.
Mhm. And let's talk about fatigue, because this is something for a high performer, it can creep up on you and it's invisible and you can't see it creeping up on you. What are some of these ways that fatigue can change a person and their relationships and even their sense of self?
Yeah. Cancer fatigue is unlike anything else that someone has experienced unless they've had cancer fatigue. It's
Mm,
not, being exhausted and tired of a healthy person. It's profound depletion that affects every dimension of a person's life. One of my patients, when I very first started out, I was doing a qualitative study actually, and they described fatigue as an overwhelming, all-consuming feeling that impacts every aspect of their life, unlike anything they had ever experienced before. And I've observed how this invisible burden transforms people in subtle yet profound ways. The physical fatigue is, clearly the one that I think most people can relate to the most, and it impacts every aspect of their life. People want to just go and lie on the couch, which is completely the wrong thing. And when I do this as a regular talk, I've got this great slide of Judy's Curl Up and Die Beauty Salon, because that's where we send all cancer patients to curl up and die. Um, and people are still being told to this day that rest is so important. And I was just talking about the balance of rest. Because you can't push yourself so much, but the more you rest, the worse your fatigue gets, and it's really a counterintuitive process. But when you exercise, it reinvigorates you. It gets you out of that chronic cycle that makes you feel like you're circling the drain and get about to getting sucked down. And with cognitive fatigue, it completely clouds people's thinking. It affects their word finding, their ability to make decisions. It makes simple tasks feel just overwhelming and like doing this super complex puzzle. People forget their keys when they don't have any kind of dementia or any reason to forget their keys, except that they have this profound cognitive fatigue. And so when you've got physical fatigue and cognitive fatigue, then naturally it affects your emotion and it amplifies your isolation. And when you're so profoundly fatigued, I mean, it interrupts everything you're doing. You don't have the energy to go out. It takes energy to talk on the phone. It takes energy to send an email. So you become very withdrawn. and you start to lose connection with the people around you, and people are then afraid to say, well, I don't want to go bother Anna because she's so tired, when in reality that's exactly what the cancer survivors need, is some interaction to kind of spark them and wake them up again. And perhaps most profoundly is how fatigue alters people's relationships. Because in time, as I just said, people don't want to interact with you. They think they're bothering you. And you don't have the energy to go to lunch with your friends or go out for coffee. And so dreams and plans, they get postponed indefinitely. And because you have the lack of physical resources to go and do things. Um, what's remarkable is about how incredible exercise is. A small dose of exercise can really start to paradoxically change how your fatigue is affecting you, which is so counterintuitive for most people. But watching someone transition from being totally consumed by their fatigue to gradually reclaiming their energy is like witnessing somebody who's coming back from the dead. They've come in and suddenly the light bulb has been turned back on, and they've got sun and hope and happiness in their expression. Their whole world begins to expand again.
And you've helped thousands of people do this and go from fatigued, exhausted to energized.
Mhm.
Is there a story that sticks with you, someone whose transformation to energized has, reminded you why you started this, why you do this work?
Yeah, I have so many memories of different people who I've really made a difference for. But I think the images are most profound from when I very first started this work in the 1990s, because it was so cutting edge. It was very hard to get research approval because people were afraid it might hurt people. And so the patients that I rolled on my trials were really they were profoundly depleted and fatigued. And so, yeah, Maria was a woman. She was, I think, 42 or 43. She had a very aggressive form of breast cancer. When I met her, she'd been through several different rounds of treatment, and she had been very active, and was the mother of several, small kids. And when we started our exercise program, she could literally barely get up out of a chair. I mean, she had to push herself up out of the chair. And so we started simply walking around her dining room table. I pulled the chairs away and she would walk around the dining room table. And since then, I've told many patients to do this because the chairs are out of the way. They've got the table there to grab on for balance. And she would hold on to the table and like steady herself and be like astounded she was up and walking. And she knew she had the emotional support of the chairs behind her to sit in if she needed to sit down suddenly. And about 3 months later, she came in for follow-up, and she was so tearful because she had been able to go to her son's soccer game and stand on the sidelines and cheer for him. And
Hmm.
that was the first time she'd been able to do that since her diagnosis. And she was just so excited and overwhelmingly emotional about it. And she was now, able to do things that she hadn't been able to do in years. During her treatment. So that was really exciting. And my research has reached so many people with different types of diagnoses, different stages of disease. And now through my cancer exercise app, people get a personalized exercise prescription based on their age, their prior exercise history, the type of cancer they have, their stage of cancer, their diagnosis, all that stuff. And then every day they go to exercise, it provides a very specific exercise program for them. It's not just like, oh, today everybody gets this exercise prescription. So it adapts constantly to how the individual is doing. So I'm really reaching people all over the world, which is really exciting.
Let's talk about the resource that you have specially for our listeners. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, so they have a cancer survivorship checklist that I developed that really walks somebody through. Even if you're on treatment, it's beneficial. Whether you're on treatment or out of treatment and you're trying to recover, it walks you through all the different steps. And it's 4 pages of physical things that you can do to get your energy back, nutrition things that need to be considered to help you move along. And it goes through the three different areas. So it's stress management, it's building community because that's so important, especially if you've been so fatigued that you've, kind of lost contact with your community. We talk about sleep hygiene and how to improve your sleep. So it's a really comprehensive checklist and it's free. So I hope that it will be helpful for folks.
I love those pillars, especially community, for its relationship to personal wellness.
Hmm.
And that sounds like a really valuable resource. We'll have the link to that in our notes. Uh, let's talk about the beginning of your new identity. And let's go back to the moment that you received your own diagnosis. And I would love to know if you were to think back to who you were then and how did that identity change or unravel and deepen over those months that followed when you had your diagnosis?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with lymphoma when I was in college, and I was getting ready to graduate from nursing school, and I was, just a happy-go-lucky kid, really looking forward to graduation and moving on to my life. So I was, I mean, I was just totally, I was stopped in the moment when I got diagnosed and totally terrified, afraid that, I wasn't going to be able to meet any of my life goals and dreams. And really, what happened is that my whole identity I changed and deepened in really profound ways. Having to face your mortality and the realization that all of your future plans could be shattered. I think, when you're really young is shocking. But I was working in a bone marrow transplant unit, and at the same time that made it really even harder because that was in the mid 80s. And 50% of patients in those days didn't walk out of didn't make it out of the transplant unit. It's very experimental treatment then. So it was really jarring, but it gave me the time to have a lot of introspection and realize I have to do things right now. And that's how I started cycling. And that's how I started, changing my whole life and discovered my life mission was to help cancer survivors. And I've been on that path ever since.
And today, in quiet moments, what are the types of things that keep you grounded? Is there a voice in your head, something that you tell yourself each morning?
Yeah, so my morning routine begins with a gratitude meditation, and I spend deliberate time every morning um, planning out what my perfect day would be. Because if I just get up out of bed and I don't spend time thinking about what my perfect day will be, it can go to hell in a handbasket really fast. So if I kind of have things, a dream world, that really helps to ground me. And I'm always grateful for my experience, as a cancer survivor, because it's given me so much wisdom and bravery and the willingness to step out and do new things. Um, and every morning I think about cancer survivors and I think about that today's research could become the new standard of care for tomorrow, and really change the way the world is for people. So I have the sense of purpose that gets me through the invisible challenges of everyday life and my work. Um, and when obstacles rise, I always have the faces of patients and all the people that I've helped and my family to kind of support me and get me through those rough times.
And when you think about your work, uh, because it's not just science, it's very much service, what do you hope people are going to remember or carry
Mm.
with them after the work?
Yeah, that's a nice question. Yeah, when I really do think of my work as service. I hope that cancer patients will carry away the knowledge that I've gained, and I'm trying to relay to the rest of the world, that they can do a lot more, that they're capable of, and that they realize despite illness and life struggles, and that so many patients come to me believing that cancer has permanently diminished their life and that weakness is their new normal. And so if they leave from using my app or from a cancer exercise program offered somewhere in the world with a lived experience of their own strength and adaptability, that's a phenomenal legacy. And I hope that people remember that healing isn't passive. It's really an ongoing active journey. Even when you're many years past treatment, you need to be actively engaged in your own healing through stress management, nutrition, exercise. And certainly for the field of exercise oncology, I hope it continues to grow and evolve, and I think it will. It has, I have witnessed its development from the early years in the 1990s when suggesting exercise for cancer survivors was really considered radical, to seeing it become accepted as important, and it's almost standard practice in oncology care right now. When we get to the point that Medicare and insurance covers exercise oncology rehab, I feel like we will have made a huge stride in cancer care because it will be really then become standard of care.
Mm.
So my greatest wish is that this work continues to expand, bringing transformative power of exercise to all people with cancer, regardless of their circumstances or their resources. And one of the reasons when I made the cancer exercise app, it's free. There's an Android and an iOS version, and it's free because I want this information to be out to patients. It's critical to their healing and their recovery.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What a mission, what a legacy.
Mhm.
Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Um, I just hope that our talk today really inspires people to become more active in their healing journey,
Mm.
even if they're not cancer survivors. That they become more involved in managing their stress, their nutrition, their exercise, and not be a passive viewer of health, but really be actively involved in it. Um, and I hope people will find the checklist useful because it's helped thousands of other people before you. It's evolved based on how the research has changed and what we've learned. And it really gives you a blueprint of where to go to move forward in your healing journey.
Anna, it's been such an honor and pleasure to have you on today, and you're absolutely valued in my life for this shift from thinking about healing as something that's passive to something that's active, specifically with something as major as loss of health from cancer or a major illness. So thank you so much for sharing your
You're welcome.
wisdom, your checklist, your app with our community. And I wish you lots of success this season ahead.
Thank you very much. Yeah.